Just Branding. Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Just Branding. Today, we have a special guest for you. We have all the way from the Netherlands, and I'm going to say his name wrong, I am sure, but I'm going to do my British best to pronounce it in a British way. Folkert van de Heide. It's probably not pronounced anything like that, but we are super thrilled to have Folkert on. He is a business advisor and consultant in the fields of business and marketing, and he believes building a good business means building a good brand. Folkert has an amazing experience and has had an amazing career working mainly in the food and beverage industries. So today we're going to get our knives and forks out. We're going to get our glasses out and raise them to Folkert because we're going to be focused in the food and beverage brand space. Welcome to the show, Folkert.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. It's truly an honor. And I'm thrilled, actually.
Well, we're thrilled to have you.
So are we.
And let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Anything could happen. This could be so thrilling. One thing that you may know, Folkert, if you've listened to any of our past episodes, is that we love to start off with definitions, because brand is a difficult subject for people to get their heads around, and just to make sure that we're all coming at the subject with the same lens, if you like, on. One thing, the first sort of thing that we'd like to kick off with is, how do you see brand? And I know particularly you come at things from a marketing perspective. So how do you see brand and marketing? What are those to you, and what is the difference between them?
Well, it's quite simple, actually. Basically, it's all about essentialism, I think. And for me, maybe quotes to somebody else, but for me, branding always comes first. And for me, branding is nothing more just to be about building your reputation, or what people think is your reputation, or how they perceive their reputation. And the difference between marketing and branding is quite simple as well. Marketing is down to three basic elements, if you will. Your market orientation, and then see what happens in the marketplace and how you fit in that one. And then go to two, strategy, about how and why you do it. And the third one is basically about going into tactics, how to you get your goals in those fields of marketing, basically. So in essence, branding is about building your reputation, and marketing is about getting there. So that's, for me, the essentialism of those two items.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for clarifying that in such a simple way. You know, it's surprising how many guests we get on and we say, you know, how do you understand this? And, you know, it's very difficult to get sometimes a simple answer. So I think you've done really, really great there. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You could also see it as as we love to play soccer, you know, or football in Europe.
I knew this was going to come up. I know,
but
if you just glance at Folkert's Instagram, you'll see that he's a big football fan. So yeah, talk football. Let's do it. Let's talk.
Well, you know, the thing is about the objective is to win a Champions League, I think. And the goal is to win a match. And the strategy is about, well, I want to do it full on attacking, or I want to do it defensively. And the tactics would be to win the competition, or to win the game, would be how to position all the players on the field, would be tactics, right?
Yeah.
And tactics change. So basically you could see branding and marketing as a football pitch and the players on it, and just to try to achieve something successful. And not everybody gets the chance to be successful. So
I love that analogy. So the strategy is to win, but the tactics change in the game as you try and look at the situation and the playing field before you. That's great.
Yeah, but the strategy also could be in the way you play it. You know, when you go to Ajax or Barcelona, they like to play attackingly. I mean, Barcelona should not be a very good metaphor nowadays, but anyways, they love to play attacking football. You know, and everybody loves them for it. So that could be a strategy to attack full on, or just to be a strategy thinking, well, I'm just be a little bit more careful and let me go defending ways, and hopefully I will score one goal, which wins the game as well. So different strategies, different tactics, same result.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Right. So now we understand how you're coming at the topic.
Yeah.
One thing that I think would be helpful for folks, and I'd love to know more of actually, is to really dive into your story. So I don't know if you could give us like a light touch sort of headlines of how you started out in the industry and how you've ended up, because I know one of the things that I'm really excited to go into is is one of your drinks brands, Moi. So it'd be really great to dive into that in a bit. But if you could sort of talk about your experiences, how you started Moi as well, that would be great, and what you're up to now as a business consultant, how that all fits together.
All right. I basically rolled into the fields of marketing, actually. But the funny thing is that I come from a family with entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And they were very successful, but they were always very simplistic in the way they approached it. So I got a really good feel about doing things sensibly and logically. And so then I studied at the university. I came off it, and then I...
Oh, sorry to cut across. What were your what kind of businesses were your families involved in? What sort of products or services did they entrepreneur in?
Well, the funny thing is there was a financial director as well, but he did it himself.
All right.
And there were my uncle was a farmer.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that being a farmer nowadays, you have to be a marketer yourself. And but they're very sensible in the way they approach their business. Everything is very simply done. They think logically, and you might not agree with them, or you disagree with them, but you cannot ignore them. They go about the business very simplistically. And when they do it, it all makes very sense. And I always kept that in mind, keeping things simple. And then there's some small businesses. There were some. My father sold advertising or did advertising and had his own work clothes manufacturing brand. And then he sold those clothes to workers and farmers and all those kinds of people that work. And I went to the university and came off it, and I started off working for a watch manufacturer in the north. And he just started off building his own brand, and he was sort of a nutty professor, He was not very communicative, but I could work with him. And we just get on with it, and we build his brand and the basic elements very simplistically, like he would oversee all the things that were going on. And then we got a lucky break, and a journalist came on and wrote the whole story instantly. And you have to remind, in 2002 or 3, social media wasn't really up there.
No.
Facebook was just kicking in, and there were all different platforms, but the main platform was television and journalism.
Sure.
And we got a lucky break, and it instantly was out there. And we built a very unique watchmaking company and a very unique watchmaking brand. And it's still there, and it sells watches over 50,000 euros, which is, 40,000 pounds.
Wow.
So I learned a lot from him, and he even was so reluctant to sell his watches to certain people. They were not in his correct state of mind. He wouldn't sell a watch. I always find it fascinating, why does somebody who was interested in your watch but wouldn't sell it?
Yeah.
And he said, listen, he doesn't represent what I'm standing for. He is not the person that would, carry the watch with, with disdain or with,
Like it would affect his reputation, right? Like the watch's reputation and the brand of the watch by who wears it. That's
who wears it. So, very hard man to work with, but I love him dearly, and I still talk to him. And that was my first thinking going into marketing. And then I said, listen, Mr. Van der Gang, that's the watchmaking, I want to learn more, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit stuck here. And he said, you're correct. You have to go to large corporations because there you learn your marketing and your branding quite quickly. So I did.
Nice.
And I went to Sarah Lee, coffee making, learned the basics of marketing very quickly, and learned the corporate way of marketing thinking quite quickly.
Okay.
And I can do my marketing plans and branding plans basically in 3-4 sheets.
Wow.
On a PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
With the commercial grids and the budgets as well. Very learnful, learned a lot from them. And then I progressed into different companies, large companies again. And eventually started off doing it myself because I felt, you build a business in 1 year, it stands, and then people who harvest their brands very good, you should come in. So I started off on my own, actually, doing it. And all the takeouts from all the different companies I could put into myself. And I worked for large corporations again, but then for myself, a beer company, a coffee making company again, all different fast moving consumer goods companies.
Yeah. So why did you end up in that space? Was it deliberate choice to go into fast moving consumer goods, or was it, or with beer and coffee and that kind of stuff, just with the corporations you happen to work with, or do you have a particular love for that side of products and brands?
Well, not particularly. No, I just roll into them, and what I find most interesting is the feel you get of the target audience that consume those products. Have a certain feel for them, and they love consuming them, and some of them brings a smile to them, and I love working there, and I love the process of getting there and eventually get the smiles from those people saying, yeah, we've done it right.
So we want to dive into that process in just a second, but before we do, talk to me about Moi. How did you start that? What was that about? And what is Moi? Because I know it's a massive brand in Europe, but for those outside of Europe, they'll be interested. Talk to us about that.
In general, what's going on in the Netherlands, and I was talking 4 years ago, and Moi is the first ever lemonade or soda based upon 100% fruit. That is what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. And 4 years ago, I felt that the general public, especially in the Netherlands, were thinking about their minds, their bodies, the food consumptions, and the products that were out there weren't supporting that idea. So people have to look very carefully for those type of brands or products to be healthy or to be, I don't know, taking care of the bodies, and those products weren't there. And one day I went into the supermarket and I looked at the lemonade or soda shelf, and I was particularly interested in what wasn't there. So what I've seen is that there were a lot of sugary drinks, and there were a lot of differences in that category. Some of them had additives on, which resonate with rhubarb or whatever kinds of fruit that were in there, but still additives, and was later added on. So I could see the picture in front of me, say, listen, if that's a general idea of the public, taking care of their bodies and be more aware of what you're taking in, why isn't it there? Mm. So I was thinking, let's make a product which is good enough, but is going absolutely back to pure. And that was the idea. And I then went on to my home, run off to my attic above, sat into my office, and then wrote the whole plan instantly in an hour and a half, I think. Just wow. Carving it out on the walls. Listen, it should be this and it should be that. And
can we ask what was in your plan?
Well, I wanted to make a product for a target audience who would like to have a product which is going absolutely back to pure. So when you consume it, you can feel, it's 100% fruit. It's no added on, it's whatever, but it's absolutely going back to pure. That was my main idea. And I wrote it down. Going back to pure was the big brand idea. And everything came into place, because if you say you go back to pure, you have to be absolutely spot on in everything, product wise, branding wise, boxes, everything should be back to pure. So I let it go for 3 or 4 weeks, and then I read an article with a woman, which would be later on be my companion or my business associate, and she was telling about local fruits that were growing here and were forgotten over the years. In the late 30s and 40s, it was in the Netherlands very much consumed, those fruits. It was found in the local fields, and she was doing something with them. And that was the driver that told me instantly, well, now I have to pick up the phone and get in contact with her. And we did. And I told the story to Grietje. I told her what my plan was and what I wanted to create. And she was very, very pleased that someone would even consider doing that. And we went down from there, actually.
So what was, I'm curious, what was the process after you came up with this plan to get it from your idea to a finished product? Like, did you do any market research, or did you just have a gut feeling? Do you think it was like your experience from your past beverage experience that you saw this gap? There's a lot of questions here, but I'm just trying to piece all the things together.
Yeah. Well, at first it was a gut feeling, and then you start filling in the blanks, and then you do some market orientation and basically answer the question, am I right? Is it true? Or is it just, I don't know, something that I was thinking should be there but isn't actually? And then we went on from there, and I find that if it hasn't been done before, a market orientation wouldn't make any sense. It would make sense if you feel that things aren't there. You can resonate with, I don't know, sales going up or going down. There is no benchmark. So I think, well, is it there? It hasn't been done. Let's do it.
Let's try it. So, Folkert, I've got tons of questions. I hope you don't mind me wading in here.
I know.
Because what I think is fascinating about you is that a lot of people have ideas, right? But not a lot of people progress forward with those ideas. So, what gave you the confidence to pick up that phone and talk to her? What drives, you seem to be somebody who gets on with stuff. A lot of brand people don't own their own brands. So, I'm really particularly interested, like Jacob just sort of touched on, as to how you then, went forward. Did you get finance and funding, and what drove you into that, really to kind of make something special?
Well, first of all, I believe that marketers or brand managers should pick up the phone and go on with it. You cannot sit at the office all day thinking about what should be and then do it in your PowerPoint presentations in Excel. You have to organize something. You have to do it. And then you find all the people that would like to help you, and then you go on from there. That's basically it. And there were a lot of people that would like to help us. But in essence, we hadn't had any funding whatsoever. So we basically did it ourselves. Wow. We funded our own things, which came at a heavy price, at a heavy cost, because cash flow at your own money would be severely damaged at that point. Bearing in mind that you have to do your production, you have to design, you have to do your bottling, you have to buy your bottle glasses, everything you have to do yourself. Mm. But the funny thing is that we were very keen on allocating budgets and very good on keeping those budget. And long story short, in essence, we did it with, I don't know, 70,000 euros.
Wow, that's great.
I don't know, 60,000 pounds. Yeah.
Impressive. Really impressive. I think what that story is sort of highlighted is your approach is like you said, you started off and you were on an entrepreneurial family that kept things very simple. And you mentioned that you kept your big brand idea for Moi very simple, back to pure, right? So the big idea just kind of guided it through. And does it still guide it as a brand? I mean, there's a few years on now, so is back to pure still at the heart of it? Yeah.
Yeah, back to pure is still the heart of it, and the reputation that you building on that, let's say the branding part of it, is that people feel that when they consume it, it's absolutely going back to pure. It's so natural, so pure. And that was the big brand idea. And the end game, so to speak, is what we felt for Grietje and for myself as well, is that we feel that a lot of people don't know how to prepare their meals, or how to buy their meals, or buy their vegetables, and all about discipline. The discipline to take care of your body. And the Moi Lemonade brand was all about educating people. Listen, you have to take care of your body. You have to take care. You cannot go and buy convenience good all the time, or sugary drinks all the time. You have to do it. And that was the why we do it, opposed to how we do it, is going back to pure. Basically what it is.
Wow. No, I think it's powerful. It's really powerful.
And it's still there. It's still there. It still works.
What's the future for Moi? Do you want to sort of grow that any further, or are you comfortable with where it's at? What's your sort of thoughts on where it could end up? Could it end up in the UK? Could it end up in the US or Australia with Jacob?
Yeah. It should. It should. It's still there. It's still going. And I feel that Moi Lemonade has now is in a stage where it should have, I think, new leaders. They should go into building or expanding on the brand essence, and then get all the distributors and the wholesalers. But essentialism is about, is the brand still there for the customer? And I believe it is, and it should go on from there quite quickly.
Right, folks. So if anybody is out there and they want to take on a Dutch brand and take it to the world, have a chat with Folkert after this. Sorry, Folkert, if you get hundreds and hundreds of people emailing you now.
No worries.
But, hey, who knows? There could be somebody in there that you can work with. Cool. So what I wanted to sort of ask you about really here was, you mentioned the budget. Relatively small budget for Moi, and obviously that budget wasn't just there from a marketing and a brand perspective, but it was there from a production and an operations perspective as well. So very small budget, I imagine, for Moi, really, when it boils down to it. And I know that you've also mentioned in this interview so far that you work for really big corporate organizations in the food and beverage space. Yeah. So what I was going to ask you was what are the main differences, would you say, between working on a smaller startup kind of business to working in a big corporation in terms of the brand and the brand strategy? Does it change at all in terms of how you approach it, or does the essence of it and coming up with the big ideas, does that remain the same? How would you answer that? What's the difference between big and small?
Well, the difference between big and small let me start off with how it works in large corporations. Large corporations have shareholders, and the shareholders only want one thing, basically.
Sure.
And large corporations have enormous costs, so they should finance those costs. And the way to survive for those large brands, large corporations, is new product development and keeping their cash cows or the existing products up there. So it finances new ones. And when you go to market those brands and those corporations, you have to bear in mind the portfolio of those particular brands. And when you do, you allocate those budgets. Why you do it is basically that you want to have a consistent sales revenue, or sales and therefore revenue. because the distribution of it is very limited. You could either go to the bars and restaurants, or the out of home side of things, or you can go to the supermarkets. And most of those large corporations go to supermarkets. So therefore, you're very limited in that perspective.
Sure.
So, and then there is the consumers, the target audiences of the side of things. So when you market those products, you have to be very good in your market orientation. So you have to be perfectly clear what's going on there at the marketplace. So therefore you can align what your sales should be over 1 year, let's say year to date or full year on. And then you budget your marketing money, or your budget, you allocate them. And
okay.
The thing is, those large corporations that we're getting at, those large corporations has to pay some sort of taxes, because they have a huge target audience and a huge audience that buy their products. But when they do not invest in their brand, such as of care for their brand, then the brand would neglect, and then you have a hard time selling those products to those people, and then the sales will go down. And then you have your arguments with shareholders saying, listen, that portfolio isn't doing its best enough. Why is that? How is that? So you have to pay your taxes. So large corporations have a budget for one product, 1.1 million in the Netherlands alone for one product.
Yeah.
And I work for a large German corporation based in Amsterdam, and we just spend over 5 million, just 5 million euros, just to get things on television. Do your sales promotion? Do you above the line, below the line? So you have to pay your taxes. And opposed to startups, then you have to be very, very careful about your money, how you spend it. And most things go into production, branding, developing, before you even start thinking about marketing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, large corporations, the thing is that money is always there. And you have to pay your taxes just to get your sales up to level. So the goals for a large corporation would be, well, we would grow, let's say 2 or 3%, or we would maintain our market share. And then you spend your money on above the line, below the line, sales promotion, trade promotion, by such means that in the end of the year, you got a presentation on the shareholders or on your board of directors saying, listen, we spend over 1.5 million and sales would be up 1.5%. And you get an argument about why it isn't 2%.
Yeah.
That's the basic idea of it. Versus startups, you're always thinking, well, I want to tell the story about the brand, but I haven't got money for it. And how do we do it? And even in the lemonade or sugary drinks, it's a branding game, it's a marketing game. So eventually you have to finance it, or maybe even have, market capitalization or some outstanding finances that would like to invest in your brand, and then it's becoming a whole different game, which is basically the difference.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you talk about that. I think the thing that you've pointed out there, really, for me, is that the kind of the time horizon is a bit different often. That's how I see the difference between, because I've worked in corporates as well as, working with startups as well. And the time horizon, so in other words, how long you're planning out for and the impact of what you're doing is often measured in a much longer time span in corporations, because you are, as you say, you're planning quarterly, you're planning yearly, you're reporting to shareholders over time, and they want to know why, it's gone up 1%, down 1% or whatever. Whereas when you're in startup mode, it's often a lot more instant and a lot more the impact is a lot faster from the brand and the marketing side of things. But going back to the original question, do you think that the brand from the strategic approach, you mentioned the big idea, for example, that you had for Moi, do you think that side of things changes the simplicity of what the brand stands for? Does that change from a big organization to a big brand with loads of capital behind it to a small brand like a startup? Do you think that changes?
Well, in essence, essentially, no, it doesn't. It's still the same brand essence, but it feels differently. And I believe that the branding in large corporations should be exactly the same in startup. But in the fact of the matter is, it's mostly isn't. And but however, there are still large corporations that nowadays feel, listen, we should invest in our brand. We should take care of our brand. Because eventually, on longer term, the cost of market those brands are lower than when you do not do your branding or your love and caring of your brand. And I believe there are still some differences, but they're catching up both ends of the supply line, I think. So startups and corporate.
I was just going to say, I think the other thing that possibly corporates have to do and big companies have to do more of in terms of investment is once they've invested in their brand, they know why it exists, they know who they're there to serve, they understand their big idea that they're trying to rally people around, they have to invest in communicating that internally as well, so that their people all understand it, their sales team are all trained on it, their marketing team will speak with the same tone of voice. Whereas when you're a small, nifty, startup, with a very small team, you don't have to invest so much in all of that apparatus to make sure that everybody internally understands the brand, because you're just sitting across the desk from them or, on a Slack channel away from them. So there's a difference in I guess, in internal comms as well, like you were mentioning, which makes it slower in a bigger organization to potentially affect change or really push that brand forwards. But if you do it, you're absolutely right. It's easier to recruit people. I think I've seen that in my work. It's easier to engage consumers because consumers understand what you're about a lot more. So you get more market penetration. So the whole thing is different yet the same, as you say. I like the way you explain that. It feels different, although the concepts might be the same.
And if the thing is about large corporations versus startups, I have a saying, I like good organization badly managed versus good managed poorly organized.
Yeah.
When you get that into your head and in your mind, I say at large corporations, look, keep it simple, just organize it, and how it's managed, nobody cares, basically. But in large corporations, it's still the other way around,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wow, it's absolutely been fantastic and fascinating hearing the way that you talk about that. I'm sure there's loads more we could dive into, but just before we're running out of time, and I want to be respectful of your time. We've already had loads of value from you, but just as we start to think about winding up, one question that I think would be really amazing for food and beverage brands, if anybody's working in that space, to hear, is, do you have any kind of top tips, particularly around food and beverage, and particularly around this concept of brand strategy, to give to folks perhaps in that space, perhaps aspiring to enter into fast-moving consumer goods? What are your tips? What are your thoughts around what people should bear in mind in this space?
Well, first, I'm an essentialist, so I like things simple. And the funny thing is that a lot of people like things simple as well, but they make it very difficult, not only for themselves, but for other people around them as well. So basically, keep it very, very simple. And for going into a fast-moving consumer goods, when you thinking about having a career in the fast-moving consumer goods, you should, because you learn about branding, you learn about marketing, you learn about finance, you learn of allocating budgets, and do it so in large corporations, because you can do it quite quickly. You learn how to think straightforward, and then when you got all those tools, skills, and expertise in you, you can go to other fields and for other fields of endeavor to explore, and other brands and other businesses. And what I've taken out of doing it on my own and building my own brand is I made all the mistakes out there. I made them all. And you don't have to be encouraged or be scared of making those mistakes, but you're going to make them eventually.
Can we hear them?
Yeah. Oh, can we hear them? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've made a mistake about a product that it should be with less sugar, and then it exploded, and then we have to rethink everything. Yeah. We made a mistake with a partner that we took on that said, listen, I can make the whole range for you. And then he quickly disappeared instantly. He was nowhere to be found. We made every possible mistake that we could have made. And
that was on the product side. Was there anything on the strategic or marketing side that you ran into?
No, funny thing, we got that right. We got it absolutely perfectly right. No, I'm serious actually. And for a designing perspective, before you went, we went to a branding corporation in Ghent. It's a good friend of mine. And we sat down and we said, listen, we need a visualization about the brand's reputation. We sat down for nearly 5 hours, but in the half an hour, I told them the complete brand story about Mooi Lemonade, about how it's going back to pure. It needs pure fruits. It needs very little sugar. And the sugar that we use, 75% is the natural fructose of it. So to add on is, 15% natural cane sugar, which is ridiculous. The whole Mooi Lemonade only got 2 sugar cubes of sugar intake in there, which is nigh to nothing. But I told them the whole story about it should be transparent, and the fruits that we use were used in the late 30s and 40s, and people thought about a medicine and a lot of vitamins that go in there. So we have to have a medicine bottle, or an alcohol bottle to resonate with the transparency and going back to pure. And the distribution side of things, we got completely right. We got a target audience that were at venues that we would like to have, and that resonates as well. And everything out there, we got perfectly right. But on the way, we made a few mistakes about how and what.
On the product side, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. The boxes, the measurements we got a little bit wrong, and the boxes were too big, and we had to cut them in.
I think what it shows, though, Folkert, like you can talk about the measurements and the ingredient, a few little issues, distribution, whatever. But the thing is that what it shows is if you have a great brand idea that resonates with a consumer, that's basically grounded in trends, which is what you were talking about, right? Like you stood there at the supermarket shop looking at the lemonade and realized there was nothing there that was mildly healthy, and that's a trend. So if you've got all of those things in place, you can build a fantastic brand. But it isn't just about having, and this is a phrase I use a lot, and I know you agree with this, it's not just about the veneer at the end. It's not just about the lick of paint. It's about actually having something that consumers enjoy and will like and value, and fits with their identity and helps them overcome or come to overcome a challenge or reach a goal. And if you can find that, which I think that you've done there with Mooi, you can, that's the strategic side, right? And then how you get there with the distribution and all those challenges that you've talked about, you can almost be forgiven for, you can overcome that, but you've got to get that strategy right at the start. And then reflect that in your creative, in your marketing, and all that other stuff. All of that can come. So that's the lesson I'm taking away from your story today. Get the heart of your offer correct. Get it right. Work on that. Make it simple was what I heard from you. Do it simply. I like that word, essentialist. Let's all try and be a little bit more essentialist in our lives. Keep it simple. Make mistakes, and let's get on and build some better brands. Listen, Folkert, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been phenomenal to have your expertise on. Jacob, was there any kind of final things that you might wanted to, maybe mention, ask, or do to wrap up?
No, I think we can wrap up here. Thank you. Likewise, I double what Matt said. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in as well. We appreciate shares, likes, comments, reviews, especially. So thank you. Where can we find you, Folkert?
I got an own website, actually, to be perfectly honest, but it's in Dutch. It still needs some English work on it, so it will be there quite quickly. But it's my full name and on .nl.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And you're on LinkedIn as well, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn as well. I will set all the parameters in English so everybody can follow it.
Brilliant. We'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, and it was lovely talking to you guys. Beautifully. It
was excellent having you on.
Yes.
We're so thankful. Good luck with Moy. Good luck with all your business efforts. And let's keep in touch. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.